So, if you've ever heard this phrase, I do not think that word means what you think it means. First of all, it's from Princess Bride. If you haven't seen that movie, it is an awesome one. But we're going to talk about a term today, antisocial. And I do not think that word means what you think it means. And we're specifically going to talk about the fact that a lot of people with antisocial personality disorder may not actually have the disorder, especially if they live in a colonized nation and they've dealt with trauma from being colonized. Okay, I'm Dr. Regina. I'm a board certified psychiatrist. I'm also a board certified lifestyle medicine physician. What we're talking about today is antisocial personality disorder, which is a personality disorder. But I've actually, this is why I love doing CE. This is why I love listening to other people that talk and speak. And this is why I absolutely love learning. Antisocial personality disorder is a condition. It's one of the personality disorders in the book called the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And that manual basically says if you ignore rules, if you function contrary to society's way of living, then you likely have antisocial personality disorder. But what if some of the behaviors we call antisocial are actually survival skills? Have you ever wondered why some people stop trusting, stop connecting, stop caring about what others think? What if the problem isn't that someone lacks humanity, but that their humanity has been wounded or that they've been trained to act in an antisocial way? So, what people thinks antisocial means versus what antisocial actually really is at its essence. So a lot of times when people hear antisocial, they think, oh, antisocial, against the society, criminal behavior, anti-humane or inhumane, aggressive, manipulative, rule breaking. A person with a true antisocial personality disorder that is likely a threat from a societal perspective, that's the kind of person that will say, ooh, that person that I took, that old lady that I took her wallet out of her purse, she wanted me to steal it because she left the purse right there. If she didn't want me to take it, she wouldn't have left it there. Constantly blaming another person for what they're doing, right? And they're kind of making up their own rules as they go. That's kind of what we're thinking about when we're thinking about antisocial disorder. And yes, those behaviors can absolutely exist, but behavior is usually the last chapter. If you've been riding with me for a little while and you heard one of the things that I was just sharing, I was talking about anger. Anger might show up first, but it's not the main event. Behind the anger may be feeling disrespected or anger, or I'm sorry, or embarrassment or fear or anxiety or depression, right? Just like anger shows up first, but is usually not the main character, behavior is often the last chapter of the story, not the first. People behave after they experience significant strong emotion, right? Person felt disrespected and they punched somebody, right? But there's also a thought connected to that. Oh, he disrespected me. If I don't show that I don't roll that way, or I'm not the one to be messed with, if I don't put the stake down right now, everybody's going to keep disrespecting me and I'm going to have to deal with this the whole time I'm here. So let me just lay down the law right now. And then the behavior comes, last chapter of the story. The real question is what happened before the behavior appeared, because usually most people, they're not just groomed. They're not, they don't just become antisocial from the womb. Okay. And there are a couple things that I think we need to be talking about here, because a lot of times we'll say a person is antisocial and they really aren't. Sometimes they're practicing civil disobedience. If antisocial really means against society, but if the rules of society are wrong, it's not called being antisocial. Because if the rules of society say that slavery is okay, but slavery subjugates a whole group of people, or if it says the caste system is okay, but that subjugates a whole group of people, if it says that wealth gaps and huge wealth divisions, like one person making $1 trillion and another person being destitute and hungry, a child being destitute and hungry, Who's antisocial? Who's antisocial? Who's against society? The person that's for society is the person that's going to uplift the child from poverty. It's going to uplift the person from a jobless state. It's going to be welcoming and inclusive to the person with the disability or the different ability. Okay, that's being pro-social. Antisocial, honestly, really, we may need to change the DSM, because what we think are antisocial, they really may be life skills. They really may be survival skills. One of the most devastating effects of colonization was not simply the loss of land or resources. And I'm talking global colonization. I'm talking United States coming, or people coming from Britain into what we now call the United States and oppressing and stealing land from the Native Americans, the indigenous people. Loss of land, loss of resources. The British going into, the Dutch going into, the Portuguese going into, the Spanish going into, name a nation that has not gone into the continent of Africa and gone to different areas and taken land and resources. Those are devastating effects of colonization. There are still artifacts from Benin and Togo and Nigeria in British museums, and they've refused to send them back. Loss of land and resources, devastating. But that's not the most devastating effect. The most devastating effect is the disruption of connection to family, community, culture, identity. I have Nigerian ancestry. I have Ghanaian ancestry. I have Sierra Leonean ancestry. I couldn't tell you exactly my family members right now because of the loss of identity. Because when my people came here, they were no longer what their original name were. Look at Roots. He was no longer Kuta Kente after a while. After a while, he was Toby. Safety, belonging, all of these things are a loss of connection that happens with colonization. Now, how does this relate to anti-socialism or being antisocial? If you are told that you now have to live under this new rule and follow this new culture and follow these new rules, which this current society has set up, if you say, I don't want to follow that rule, I want to still be who I am, I want to still know my name, I want to still know my tribe, I want to still know my culture, guess what? You've now become antisocial because the new society has deemed that that's not something that we want you to have anymore. But is that true antisocial according to the DSM? Maybe, maybe not. You also have to look at who's been writing some of these things. I was listening to a teaching yesterday, and it breezed by so fast, I wasn't able to catch the name, but I'm going to go look for it. But the young lady reminded us, she said, who wrote the DSM? Was the DSM written by the global majority or the global minority? That's interesting. And also, who is the DSM written by? The vast majority of people who've written the DSM or contributed to the DSM are American, United States trained researchers and authors, which means that they're not coming from the perspective of the global majority, which is why even though you'll see certain shout outs to cultural phenomenon from other parts of the globe in the back of the book, by the way, the vast majority of the DSM doesn't come from the perspective of the global diaspora. It comes from the perspective of the United States. It comes from the perspective of America. Okay, which is a concern because it doesn't look at colonization trauma or historical trauma or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't look at that. And when generations experience violence, exploitation, forced displacement, enslavement, systematic oppression, it makes it very difficult for a person to conform to the societal norms that have been set for them, right? Antisocial in the 1800s is saying, I don't want to be a slave. That was antisocial. But the sequelae, the lingering after effects of colonization all throughout the globe Usually it's chaos, that's true. But it also teaches the person that has been colonized that I really don't know if I can depend on anyone. I don't think it's okay for me to show weakness because I may be tortured more or hurt more. Oh, I'm learning that I may have to protect myself because I'm noticing that my whole family or people have been dispersed, and I really, it's just me now. So I have to kind of look out for myself, right? Or other people that were enslaved are now also taskmasters or are also enslaving other people. And I have to stay ready because this is still happening today, unfortunately. Yes, we talk about slavery as something that happened in the past. Yes, for the United States, we still deal with the ramifications, the impact of slavery. But guess what? There are people right now all over the globe that are still dealing with human trafficking and human slavery, sexual slavery. That is still a thing. And those folks who are dealing with that are also learning those lessons or have also learned those lessons. I can't depend on anybody. I can't show any weakness. I have to protect myself first. I have to stay ready. Okay. The prison system is a modern day form of slavery. It is a constitutionally endorsed modern day form of slavery. Yes, it basically says the Emancipation Proclamation, yes. But then the Constitution, when you look at the amendments that we've got, the 13th, 14th Amendment, it literally does say that you can't enslave a person, can't deny them of their ability to earn a wage for the work that they do, right? You can't enslave them and make them do work against their will unless, there's a clause, unless basically they're incarcerated. Go look it up for yourself. Don't trust me. Be like the Bereans. A lot of times, trauma tries to create protective behaviors, whether it's trauma that's been experienced for those who are incarcerated, for those who have experienced colonization. And I'm not just talking about the United States, and I'm not just talking about kind of Africa. I'm talking about people that live in Pakistan and India who were colonized by the British. I'm talking about people in Australia. Okay. I'm talking about folks from a variety of different countries all over the globe that have experienced colonization and have experienced some form of trauma because of that. They do have these protective behaviors. And I'm going to blur the lines a little bit because a child who's been betrayed may become suspicious that something else is going to happen in the future. That's a childhood trauma. But if a person has experienced generational harm, they can also be suspicious of an entire group of people, right? That's where racism kind of brews in. One individual born in chaos can become hypervigilant and aggressive because they don't want to be hurt. But a person who is raised within a society of white supremacy, who's growing up in that chaotic environment and under those chaotic teachings, they themselves become hypervigilant and aggressive against anything that is other. Okay. And from the outside looking in, we look at it as cruelty, but for them, it's armor. We look at it as indifference or prejudice, again, or racism. And in some cases, for them, it's just, they're just emotionally numb to things. And what looks like defiance 100% may be survival. 100%. When I work with folks that have been trafficked, when I work with folks that have dealt with prostitution, defiance is the number one thing that I see. That is the number one thing that I see. Even to the point of, I don't want therapy. I don't need therapy. I don't want to be here. Right? I've seen it. And it happens again and again and again. And there is a cost of this survival because, unfortunately, a child that learns not to trust as a child grows up becoming an adult who can't form those healthy relationships. A person who's learned that they have to fight for everything, they're struggling to just live in peace. It doesn't look normal to them. They don't know how to rest. Okay. And prison bars aren't the only things that can imprison us. We can be imprisoned by a lot of things, even our own protection, even our own protective mechanisms. So our group has actually been approved to do CE, continuing education for colonization trauma. And What I want to let you all know, and I know many of you that are watching are not necessarily professionals, and some of you are patients, or some of you are just random people that just just got the live. But I want you to be thinking about this from your own individual perspective. But I also want you to think about this because if you are a professional, or if you're a person that sees a professional, you have a PCP, you have a therapist, let them know about the work that we're doing. Let them know that we will be having these CEs. They're going to start in the month of August, between August and September. Sorry, between August and September, when we have a quorum, people are out on vacation and going all over the place. But when we come back, we're going to be leading these groups on trauma, on colonization trauma, and they're going to be looking at colonization trauma all around the globe, because I think that's what needs to be done. Number one, we need to talk about the problem openly. Number two, we need to talk about the solution to the problem. And the solution comes in many places, but for the people that are in our CE, because those are providers that are going to go out and see other people as therapists, are going to go see other people as educators, the solution for them is to be able to offer options for hope, options for healing. So, as an individual, especially if you're not a provider, I want you, the next time you see a person that's just kind of acting out, I want you to be thinking about the not what's wrong with this person. I want you to be thinking more about what's happened to this person. Maybe what happened to this family? What happened to this community? Maybe what's happened across generations. I want us to start having those conversations. And this isn't all. We're going to pick back up here. Not tomorrow. We have another talk for tomorrow, but we're going to pick back up here. So you're going to see colonization trauma as it relates to antisocial behavior. We're going to see that again. Okay. All right, TikTok. I have had you guys on for forever. So I'm going to end you first. And I just want to say, please join me again. I don't do the lives every day on TikTok. I usually try to do the lives Monday through Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. I see patients on Thursdays. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. I try to do some type of a live, drop something over on the other social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. But for you guys, I try to get you in when I can. So I hope you guys have a very blessed day on purpose. You guys take care. And for my folks that are over here on the platforms that I just spoke about, again, my call to action for you, and many of you can probably see my little hydroponics that are attempting to grow. These are going to be new babies that are coming up. What I want you to be thinking about is, if you have a provider in your life, a primary care doctor, a specialist, I want you to let them know that we're going to be having these continuing education programs on aspects of trauma, individual, trauma, community-wise, trauma, generational, and trauma, colonization trauma. We're going to be having all of these CE that are going to be coming up. They've been accredited by the American Psychological Association. I'm so excited about that. We actually got accredited months ago. But our core team that's going to be working together, we won't all be back together until August. So that's the call to action for today, as we talk about antisocial behaviors and the fact that many of them are survival skills. I want you to be thinking about that, and invite your specialist to watch this, and invite your specialist to connect with us. We'll have the link for the site to sign up for some of these trauma sessions starting in the month of September, just in time for you to get all your end of the year CE. Don't wait till December. Yes, we'll have some trainings in December, but I'm not going to have all the trainings in December, people. We're going to start them in September. We'll do one a month. We'll probably do 2 or so in December, because if you're anything like me, you wait until December to look back and see what you haven't done and just get it in. Like, you get a lot of stuff in throughout the year, but then in December, you take your time at the beginning of the month to look and see, okay, what have I not done? What have I not done? What do I need to get done before the 31st? So we definitely will have a couple that'll be like the first and second week of December, just for you people that are like me that need CE and want to make sure you got all your ducks in a row. All right. You guys have a very blessed day on purpose. Take care.